Hello, my name is Father Andrew Clark, and it's my privilege to be here with you as part of the Seton family. And I've met some of you, I'm sure, at the graduation Mass over the past couple of years. But for all of you who I haven't met, I'm a priest of the Diocese of Arlington, and I'm also the grandson of Dr. Mary Kay Clark. So Seton has been in and around my family ever since I was born, and I'm really, really privileged to be here. I'm going to speak to you today briefly about what it means to have a culture of nourishing vocations in homeschooling families, and the way that being part of a homeschooling family nourished my ability as a human being to have a relationship with the Lord Jesus, with my Father in heaven, with the saints, and how I was able, by God's grace, to respond to the call that He offered to me. And one of the things that I think is important for all of us to remember, right, is that as we're moving forward through life, as we're seeking to love the Lord, we don't homeschool for the sake of homeschooling, right? Homeschooling is never just the point. It's never the point just to give your children a good education. It's never the point of homeschooling just to kind of pull them away from the world, to pull them away from public schools or other negative influences. The point of homeschooling is to be formed as a family, as disciples of the Lord Jesus. That's the point. It's the education of the entire person. And one of the things that's important when we think about vocations is that priests come from families like mine, and priests also come from families like yours. I'm always intrigued and somewhat amused when people say to me things like, well, Father, I don't think any of my kids really I don't think there's really a possibility they could be a priest or a religious sister or a brother. And I always laugh because as someone who went through the seminary, priests come from all kinds of families. I had friends of mine who are now priests who came from homeschooling families. There's priests who came from Catholic families who went through Catholic school. Some of my best friends in the priesthood went through public school. And some of my best friends in the priesthood are converts to the faith from Protestantism, from paganism, believe it or not, or even from atheism. So priests come from all kinds of places. Religious sisters come from all kinds of places. And so for my talk today, for the kind of the way I want to look through the lens of the culture of homeschooling families, I think it's really important that we, from the outset, kind of set aside any idea that I'm just going to give the families who are listening to this a how-to. This is how you get a priest from your family. This is how you get a sister from your family. That's not how it works. It's not actually something that we can force in any way whatsoever, because it's really the will of our Father. So the point for me today is really to highlight the things in the life of my own family that really nourished a vocation, and to give to you ways of thinking about nourishing a culture of vocations in your own family, regardless of whether or not the Lord is calling any of the children in your household to Himself in the consecrated life. And so one of the things that from the outset was really helpful in my family was that my mom and dad emphasized that God had a deep and personal plan for our lives as children, and that His will for us was for our good and not for our ill. We hear that in the prophet Jeremiah, that God's providential plan for us is for our good. It's for our flourishing. It's for our ability to live self-sacrificial love in our life, no matter what our vocation is. And one of the things that my mom emphasized from a very young age was that we should be praying 3 Hail Marys a day. My mom emphasized we should pray 3 Hail Marys a day, that the Lord might reveal to us what our vocation is and how we are meant to love Him in the world. And this is something that I did a lot. And it actually was through those 3 Hail Marys every day that I first heard the call to be a priest, in praying those 3 Hail Marys in our local parish church here, St. John the Baptist. I was praying in the church when I was a young man, and after praying 3 Hail Marys, as I had many, many hundreds, maybe thousands of times before, but on this particular day, when I finished those 3 Hail Marys, I first felt the desire in my heart to be a priest. So like the persistence of that prayer was important. One of the other things that my parents did that I'm really grateful for is my parents had priests over. My parents invited priests to the house. And this is something that I have found many families are reluctant to do, not because they don't love their priests, but because on some level, many families I've encountered in my own parish life, my own ministry as a parish priest, I found that there's many families who are shy, or they feel somewhat embarrassed to have a priest over because maybe they feel like the house could just never be clean enough. The house could never be clean enough to have a priest over. Or sometimes people have this funny idea that they want the priest to see them wearing their Sunday best, on their Sunday best behavior, and that's how they want Father to always think of their family. But one of the things that I think it's important for families to realize is priests are human beings who came from families. So if a priest sees a family on Sunday dressed to their Sunday best and on their best behavior, the priest knows that that's not what things look like on Monday morning. And that's not a bad thing. That's normal and fine. So if you're going to invite Father over, you're not going to scandalize him. You're not going to scandalize him with your house or your behavior. That's just not going to happen. We hear confessions for a living. You come to confession to us. And so we know what family life is like, not only because we came from a family, but because we hear your confessions. So that's one of the things I think is really helpful to put aside, is any idea that if Father's going to come over, then he really needs the best china to be put out. He needs the best things. And our family needs to be at their Sunday best and on their best behavior. Priests recognize that when they come into families' homes, it might be chaos, and that's just fine. That's just fine. So I'm really grateful for my parents' attitude about that, because my parents had and continue to have great respect for priests and a great love for the priesthood of Jesus Christ, but they also always treated priests as human beings with their own personalities, their own interests, their own backgrounds, their own stories. And that was something that was really good, because I grew up in a home where priests were around, where it was not unusual for us to have a priest over, a couple times a year. And that was always a beautiful thing for me. And it really helped put flesh on kind of the bones of what we see, right? We see Father every Sunday, but when you meet priests and when you spend time with them, they become very, very human in a way that is good and in a way that God intends for them to be. Priests are human beings. So don't be afraid to have priests over. Invite Father over, invite him over, and reveal to him your love for him in the fullness of life, not just in the liturgy, but in your life as a whole. And priests love that. Priests love that, to be invited into a family's home, to see them and to meet them and see them in their totality, not just them on Sundays. One of the other things that is important in the cultivation of a vocation in the family is we're homeschooling because we love God. We're homeschooling because we wish for our children to be formed in the faith. And we believe that we, their parents, who have the primary duty and responsibility of educating our children, especially educating them in the faith, that we wish to take that responsibility seriously. And the best way we believe to do that is to homeschool our children. This is why we homeschool. One of the things that I have run into at times in my priesthood is families who are homeschooling primarily out of fear. They're homeschooling primarily because they're afraid. They're afraid of the world. They're afraid of the sins that we see in the public schools. They're afraid of the way that their children might be malformed by the world. And so they homeschool out of fear. Now, the fears are reasonable most of the time. The things that we're afraid of, right? We don't want our children to be exposed to things they shouldn't be. Absolutely not. We don't want our children to be formed in their minds and imaginations by degenerate or evil ideas in the culture. That's totally true. But we're not motivated primarily by that fear. We wish to be motivated primarily by the love of God and the tremendous confidence in his grace, that his grace overcomes sin, that his grace heals our human nature, that the sacraments of the church really do give us divine life, and that we wish to live in that divine life, that place of love, that place of trust, that place of mercy. And if our children receive from us as their parents the idea that the main reason we're doing this is because we're scared, then children will receive the faith as something that is given to them out of fear and not out of love for Christ, not out of love for the church, not out of love for our Father, not out of love for them, but because we are afraid. And that's not any reason. I shouldn't say it's not any reason. That's not the primary reason to follow Jesus or to homeschool. We don't want to rest in imperfect contrition, right? We want to have perfect contrition to the best of our ability. We want to do things because we love God. And so we want to give to our children a sense that the entire reason we're doing this, the entire reason we're homeschooling our family is because we're seeking to love the Lord. And we're seeking to form them into disciples who will also love the Lord and love one another. So the fear is not absent. The distrust of the broader culture is not absent, but it's not the primary motivation. That's important because we don't want to give our children the impression that sin really is stronger than grace, that the ways of the world really will win if we let them in, right? The Lord Jesus' grace triumphs over all evil. So we don't want to let the world in, but that's not the primary reason we're homeschooling. We don't want to let the world in because we love Christ, because we love him and we trust him. We don't want to trust the ways of the world. And if we do that, then our children will really receive from us a confidence in his love, a confidence in his plan, and a confidence that his sacraments really are the means by which they will be healed. Now, a word about discernment. Very often, I think people have this misguided understanding of what discernment is. And it's this. They have this idea that God kind of has his will for my life in his hands, but he won't show it to me. He won't show me what he wants. And so what I have to do is I have to pray as hard as I can and try and pry God's hands off of his will for my life. And if I pray hard enough, he'll kind of let me see. This is not true. This is not true. The Lord reveals his love to us how and when we are ready to receive it. How and when we will receive it as he intends it. So what is discernment? Discernment is done through desire. What do I desire? And when we talk about desire, we of course we're excluding anything sinful, we're excluding anything immoral, right? Because sometimes we want to do bad things. We want to sin sometimes. We wouldn't do it unless we didn't want to, right? But that's not when I use the word desire, I'm talking about the deepest longings of the human heart, made in the image and likeness of God. One of the ways I knew I was supposed to be a priest is because I really desired it more deeply than anything, deeper than I wanted to have a family, more deeply than I wanted to have a wife and children. And so what we're doing when we're discerning is we're asking ourselves, what do I want? And when I pray with what I want, does it bring me peace? Does it bring me peace? Or are there deeper desires the Lord wishes to reveal to me? And if I don't have peace about a decision I'm interested in making, if I don't have peace about something I think I want, but I'm not sure, then in prayer, the solution is to be open to what I really desire. And sometimes that can be a scary thing. What do I really desire? That can be scary. But the Lord is with us, and he wishes to reveal to us his desires in our desires. St. Augustine once said that the working out of the Christian life is the working out of desire, the purification of desire, and then following those desires, allowing the desire to be the engine of the spiritual life that drives me forward. So, when we look at cultivating vocations in the home, we see that homeschooling is not done out of fear, it's done out of love. And that the faith is the wellspring from which the whole family life comes. And that desire is the means by which God will lead me in prayer, asking for his peace as I go. So homeschooling families are families who are united in their love of God, and they're striving to follow him in the midst of their own sinfulness and their own brokenness. God is not asking you to homeschool your family so that you can be perfect right now. God makes us perfect over the course of our lives, slowly, day by day, hour by hour, so that in the midst of our sinfulness, in the midst of our brokenness, his love and his presence are what lead us forward. His love and his presence, which never abandon us, which never leave us. His love and his presence, which are the road of mercy, the road of trust, and the road of love. So do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. Trust the Lord. Amen.
We hope that you've enjoyed this presentation from the Seton Speaker Series. Seton Home Study School is an accredited distance school assisting homeschooling parents by providing an academically excellent and authentically Catholic curriculum. Seton staff assists you in customizing our curriculum to be the perfect fit for your child. For more information or to sign up for our free beginner's guide, please visit our website at setonhome.org.